So this video is basically just an excuse for me to get really pretentious about my own songwriting process and my own thoughts about my own music and how I feel about music and a specific debate within it. Hi guys, it's Summer, welcome back to my channel, and if you're new here, then welcome to the chaos. I do all things music related on here, from audio engineering content to production and songwriting challenges to just talking about music and musician life. And it's actually been a while since I've done a video like that where I've just sat and spoken to the camera about music related stuff, so I'm going to try and make more of that style of content again this year because, you know, it's nice to get pretentious and existential and really think about things every now and then. And I've been feeling very existential recently because obviously I've been releasing my own original music again for the first time in forever. That's not the point of this video. The point of this video is that in releasing one of my new songs, which is called Let It Settle In, and no, this video isn't just an excuse to plug this song again. I mean, it's handy. You know, there will be links below to where you can stream and buy it. If you want to be like super supportive, you can even buy it. The main purpose of it is that I just got to thinking about the differences between live music and recorded music because of this. So I tried to actually sit down and I've written notes, and I'm going to try and stick to them as best I can because I want this video to have an actual point, but I may well end up making follow-up videos to this where we expand on some of these ideas. But anyway, point being, I have a newish song out. It came out a few weeks ago now. How long has it been? It's only been out for like 2 weeks and it feels like it's been out for ages. But at the time of recording this video, I think it's only been out for like 2 weeks. And I'm going to play you some clips here comparing so you can see what I mean, because I actually performed this song slightly differently to how it was recorded. Even though like the recorded produced version of it is an acoustic style song, you know, there are some drums and there's some bass on it and there's a nice little violin part that's on it. But most of the production on the song doesn't really move it away from how it could sound live. But it's also quite a simple song, you know? Like, sometimes songs have their interest in terms of what they do with their chord choices, where the melody ends up going, changes throughout the song in terms of the rhythms you're playing and stuff like that are where the interest is added. But arguably in like the produced version of the song, a lot of the production is adding interest and drama to the song. And so when I started gigging it live, the first time I ever played it live, I actually got the comment of somebody that they felt like it just started to build at the end and then suddenly it stopped and they weren't expecting it to stop. And the whole room did that thing where they went, oh, it's over, which is embarrassing. It is embarrassing when that happens. I felt like such a failure as a musician in that moment. And I realized that simply playing it the way that I had written it wasn't going to work live. So after working at it and playing it at a few open mics in this time, I adapted how I play it live. And the main differences are quite simply, I added some strumming in. I used to just pluck the guitar. I didn't used to strum it at all for this song, but I added strumming in instead to add a sort of change in dynamic. I gave a little pause for the intro. So the intro on the recorded version, I just play that little intro guitar part and it goes straight in. But when I play it live, I pause for a bar. Listen. Now, the produced version has this leading note from the bass guitar coming into it, and it has a nice whoosh, so it didn't really need that space. But when I play it live, it feels like it needs to just sit for a bit longer. Then mostly it's pretty similar. The only other big difference to it is that when I go into the bridge, which basically isn't really a bridge, it's more of like a dramatic build-up outro section, and it's actually quite short. And on the produced version, there's loads of vocals come flooding in. There's like vocal parts singing all sorts of little harmony and backing vocal things. There's big swells and strings. The violin is going for it. Like, there's lots of other stuff in the production that means that this build-up kind of drama section is dramatic. But when I do it live, like as you can probably imagine, it's just me and my guitar. So when I play it live here, what I do instead is after I sing Where Should I Begin, I go into the chord change and I play the 2 chords, because just 2 chords in this little build-up section repeated over. I think it's 4 bars. of just the chords. And then I come in with the lyrics of the build-up section, the big vocal. Let's settle in. Where should I begin? And it falls apart, it falls apart, and it falls apart. I run slow, now I feel I'll be there. Now let that settle in. So let it settle in. Where should I begin? And it falls apart. And it falls apart. We know what we ought to end. So let that settle in. And I found that that works better, and now that section feels like there's an actual build to it. By kind of doing the opposite to what I did in the production. Like, the production has this big build moment because all of these parts come flooding in, but what it needed for the live version was for me to not start singing straight away, just let the strumming of the chords be a build-up itself, and then add to that build-up with the vocals, and let that vocal build to the big drama moment, and then come back down again. And it gives that last line where I go back to being quiet again more impact, and it gives that drama build in the moment more a feel of a build of drama. Maybe if I were playing it with a full band where there was like a drummer doing like swells and stuff and the violinist was actually doing a violin part, you know, and I had backing singers doing all the different harmony parts, or if I used a backing track, I wouldn't feel the need to do that live. But because I'm playing it just me and my guitar, that's what it felt like the song needed to me. This isn't just me being pretentious or like, I feel like that's what the song needed live. Like, I workshopped this through open mic after open mic, slowly making different changes to how I played it live. You know, starting off by adding in just the strumming, going, right, this still isn't quite working. It still feels like it's missing something. Let's try just adding some pauses here. I also play it slightly slower live. Every single time. I have never played it at the BPM that it actually is in the recorded version live, but I feel like if I'd recorded it at that BPM, it would have felt too slow. And I know this because I've watched how the crowd has changed in terms of their reaction to it. You know, each open mic I've played at it, I've gotten a better and better reaction to this song as I made these changes. I actually had someone come up and tell me that was their favourite song in my set the other week, so that's nice. That hadn't happened before. Everyone was all like, I really liked that other one you did. And I did think about making changes to the recorded version because I hadn't actually released the song when I was doing all this workshopping open mics. I was in the process of recording all of the different songs that I've put out, and I was reaching the stages of finishing it off, and I was sitting there thinking like, do I take another week and re-record the guitar and stuff so that I can add some of those spaces that I do live into this song? Like, does it need that? And I went, no, I don't think it does, and I hope that people will listen to the song now and agree with me that it doesn't need those things in the recorded version. Please tell me you agree with me. Please don't tell me I should have made a different choice in the production now that it's too late to do so. That feeling that something was missing when it was live isn't there in the recorded version for a couple of reasons. The big one being, when you record a song, you can add basically as many parts as you want to it. I can have violins, I can have lots of different synth elements, I can play with panning, I can play with changes to the EQ and all sorts of other stuff to add that drama there. It's a lot harder, especially if you're literally just a person with a guitar, to add that kind of drama in a live setting, and you have to play with different concepts in music in order to do it. I have to think more about how I'm going to play with timing, how I'm going to play with tempo. Am I going to actually subtly shift and change tempo? How I'm going to play with my voice and maybe dipping it lower in places or bringing it up higher. What kind of placement am I going to use? Am I going to use head voice placement, or am I going to use more of a chest voice placement? How am I going to strum the guitar? How am I going to change up the strumming? And these are all things that I might not then choose to actually do in the produced version, because there are other things that I could achieve the same sort of effect with, you know? Like, maybe I want to play it with really chugging guitar live, but when I'm producing it, it doesn't need it because the bass part is there, and the bass part is offering us that chugging, so the guitar can remain nice and free and open. And that's what it felt like it needed to me live. It felt like the thing it needed was space, because sometimes when you just add more space, when you let a note ring out for longer live, when you play a set of chords through for 2 more bars than you normally would, you know, that adds a build-up moment, a tension to the crowd. It tells the crowd something's coming, something's coming. You don't have to do that in recorded versions as much, because for one thing, you're not trying to push that atmosphere like you are live and get them to pay attention to you. They're already listening to your track, they're already paying attention. But also, you don't need it when there's all those other parts going on signaling it. You know, when you've got a swell signaling that, now in comes the first verse, and now in comes a big drama moment. You don't need to signal that with pause, ready, something's coming. And you see musicians use these kind of techniques all the time live that then change up a song from how it actually is recorded. And sometimes they change it up even more just to do fun, unique live versions. And I find it really interesting that I think a lot of the ways that sometimes you do this stuff live actually doesn't translate well if you try and just do it like that in the recorded version. And other times it does. And what I really want to think about in this video is this: the choices you make when you're recording a song versus the choices you make when you're playing it live, and why you might make those choices, and how and when they will actually interact and like affect each other. Actually, something that can let a recorded version of a song down sometimes is that it loses something that it had in that live feel. And then you also have people trying to replicate like what you've been able to do with a produced track into live performances now. Like, people point out constantly about the use of backing tracks, and specifically backing vocals on backing tracks, especially by really big artists. So like a really common production technique these days is to double vocals and pan them loads and have loads of big harmonies. I think I saw someone doing a really interesting video where they were talking about Sabrina Carpenter's song, what is it called? I literally play it in one of my sets. Espresso. Someone was talking about that vocal on it and how it's actually quite a difficult vocal for her to replicate live. Not just because of where it is in terms of vocal placement and the fact that she's dancing, you know, and how it's a really airy vocal, but because the way that they achieved that airy vocal that still stands out like it does on the track is not the way that you would achieve making a vocal stand out live. And so people were complaining about how they didn't like the way that her vocal sounded live, and they were calling her vocal bad, and people were like jumping to her defense like, no, her vocal isn't bad here, it's just this is a live vocal and this is a recorded vocal and you really can't compare them. And what you choose to do in the booth to make the vocals sound right on a track is not necessarily going to choose to do live. Backing tracks and using backing vocals has become a lot more common, and, you know, actually really helps to boost the vocal in these performances, because you literally just, you can't replicate that live without those backing vocals in there. They're what are giving that vocal that feel, and if that vocal doesn't have that feel, suddenly you've got a very different song, and you could choose to just do a very different live version of the song, like people do when they do those tiny desk performances, because they do like stripped back versions of the songs, and how they might choose to perform the vocal would be different in that, because the whole like production around the song has been changed to suit the setting. And people have lots of opinions on backing tracks and things like that, and this video is not about that. So obviously, a brief history of music here. Live music is all there used to be. Recorded didn't exist. Didn't exist until like what has it been? Apparently the invention of the phonograph is credited to Thomas Edison, obviously, in 1877. But like properly recording music as we understand it to these days is even newer than that. You know, it was really basic in the early days. They were literally just recording live performances, basically. That's what early recorded music was. And then slowly we started being able to do things with tape and now digital to be able to make the recording process slowly move away from that live sound. A lot of purists don't like that. They really talk about how the further we have moved from those early days of recording, the more that recorded music has become fake. So some people see live music as superior because it is older and because it relied so much more heavily on just producing the sound in the moment. Whereas recording obviously does allow for, especially these days, now that we have access to the kind of technology that makes it way more affordable to do as many takes as you like. You could literally just do 100 takes of your vocal if you wanted to. You probably shouldn't, and then you can edit that and like take those choice moments, and then you can like shift them over to put them a little bit more in time, and then you can tune them, and then you can even out sibilances and wobble and all sorts. People talk about this with singers constantly. You know, we get the most flack for the editing and the not real performers, not really good at what they do kind of critique that people like to do constantly on the internet. But the truth is, you can do it with any instrument. You can tune other instruments. Melodyne doesn't just work on vocals, and sometimes it benefits the track and it's worth doing. Other times it doesn't. But the other big difference between live music and recorded music, and kind of why people strive for this perfection in recorded music, is that live music is, for all intents and purposes, temporary. You know, even if you record a live performance, that is doing a recording of that live performance, and that's what made it not temporary, not the live performance itself. Live music is supposed to be temporary. It's supposed to be in the moment. We could do an entire video on how the obsession with recording live performances and shoving cameras in musicians' faces constantly might actually be doing a disservice to music and preventing people from feeling like they can have any imperfections, because there's going to be some permanent version of this out there somewhere. But that's a different video, so we're not going to get lost on that tangent. Nuh-uh. Recorded music is not temporary. It is permanent. It can be replayed over and over and over and over again. Whatever take you pick for that final master is the final master. It is the one that people will be streaming until, you know, they die, or until, you know, Spotify decides to take it down because it's accusing you of bot playlists or something like that. I don't know. And that obviously affects choices people make when they record music versus choices they make when they play live. One of the big things that people like to talk about is that a lot of people will say that live performance allows for more creativity because it allows for improvisation, for freedom in that moment, because live performances are temporary, because there isn't that pressure to lay down a permanent version of it. You can just try new things. This is something that I understand this point of view and why people say this. It's something I've never really felt myself as a musician. No matter, even when I'm doing the stuff that I'm like, because sometimes it's because of a lack of skill that I'm like, no, please don't ask me to improvise a guitar solo. I cannot do that. I can play you some chords. But even with the stuff I feel confident about, like I feel confident as a vocalist riffing and stuff like that. Please don't ask me to improvise it on a stage. Like in a jam session, cool. But like that's a jam session. That's a different kind of live music. That's rehearsal. That's practice. I will improvise and rehearsal you like. I will improvise to a certain extent on stage. You know, I might try something I feel really, really confident in if I'm pretty sure that, like, it's not going to go wrong. It's not, like, I might try that on stage. But most of the time, I don't want to try new stuff on stage. And I think that has a lot more to do with my personality than my skill level. You know, I don't like trying new things in general unless I've been very well prepped for them. And I don't do improvised. I do scripted, thank you. Scripted. But I understand that there is a freedom to that live performance thing, and you can have those magical, beautiful moments where it's just musicians being free to try and do that. You can also have those in a recording studio. I don't know why you think those don't exist the second you take a stage away from people. Like, if you're a musician who can only feel free to improvise when you have an audience, I don't think it's the freedom to improvise you were looking for. I think it was the attention you needed. I think you need someone to clap. I've always felt freer to be that kind of creative in this space. And I have loved music production as much as I do because I feel like it has freed me up even more as a musician to experiment. I can try even more new things that I would never be able to try on stage because of the equipment that I have access to now. But I do understand that that's not the only thing people mean when they talk about a live performance being free. And I do think that I feel it, and I feel like every musician out there feels it, this pressure when something is recorded for it to be more perfect, because it is going to get played over and over again and it's going to get put on the internet and some loser is gonna comment on the one bit you got wrong. But there is an element to live performance that is that, you know, you don't expect it to be perfect. You expect there to be mess ups. You expect people to try something and it doesn't end up working, and then for them to try something else and it works really well. When it's a recorded version of a song, there is this expectation that when people are listening, because when you listen to something over and over and over again, then every little imperfection starts to stand out more. And that's a big difference between live music and recorded music, is that live music is expected to be a little rough around the edges, and not just in terms of the timing and the tuning isn't expected to be perfect, because that's just literally not how humans naturally play. We're not robots. But it's also about compression, EQ, you know, things distorting, those harsh frequencies. This is why I personally prefer recorded music, because I don't like things that stab at my ears. A good live mix is nowhere near as like clean and smoothed out, and you know, they're just different animals. You literally cannot get that smoothness and perfection live, and it's not what it's about. But that feel of that imperfection that you get live, I understand why so many people love it so much, because it can feel more raw. You know, you can remove a human element to songs when you smooth things out too much. And a lot of people feel like that line is crossed in all modern recorded pop music. I'm more of the opinion that there's a sliding scale, and I do think that there is a level of perfection that is expected in a recorded version, that is understandably expected and that suits a recorded version more, that I would not want in a live version. But I don't agree that simply trying to get things more in time and more well-tuned and cleaned up a bit removes all of the energy from a song, you know? I also don't agree with this idea that the only way to get good performances out of musicians is for them to basically do a bad technical performance but that just had loads of energy. It's like, yeah, but when you then have to fix the bad technical performance, it's going to lose all of the energy because you can hear that a robot had to fix this, you know? But anyway, we're talking about that live feel. And a classic example of this from recent years is that Willow track, right? You know, the one where that little performance video went viral. It's Meet Me at Our Spot by Willow, The Anxiety, and Tyler Cole. That's the song I'm referring to. And then the song finally dropped and people were like, I don't like this. I prefer the live performance. You can feel people vibing off each other in that live performance. You can feel them all, you know, trying to stay in time with each other, paying attention to each other to stay in time with each other. You can feel them reacting to the way that someone sang a specific moment. And because of that, the vocals feel livelier, they feel more fun, they feel more engaging, and a lot of that engagement has been lost on the recorded version of the song. But this is my opinion on why a lot of people didn't like the recorded version of this song, and why I agree that I like the live version that I saw first better. Part of it might just have been like that clip went properly viral and people saw it loads and were hearing it loads and it was getting used as an audio on people's TikToks loads, so you were hearing that live version over and over and over and over again, and you got so used to hearing it exactly that way that when the recorded version dropped, everyone was like, no, this is way too different. It doesn't sound anything like. It's like, it actually is exactly the same. Like the parts are they're pretty much exactly the same. Things are too perfect, they're too clean, they're too in time, and those vocals are too chosen for that bit sounds pretty instead of that gives the right vibe. And they probably recorded that master before the live version went out. I don't know if they did or not. If anybody has any info or articles they want to share about that for us all to go and read up about it would be really interesting to read some more about that. They might have made different choices in the production had that happened first. But yeah, that's what it was lacking. That live feel. That dynamic variation. And just for comparison's sake, I now want to bring up Katie Tunstall, because I think there's a really good example of when that live feel of a song is different from the recorded version, but the recorded version still has, I think, the same sort of energy as the live version. And the song I want to talk about is Black Horse and the Cherry Tree. And you might have seen a particular performance she did of it on, I think it was like The Late Show or something like that. I've linked the video to the live performance and the video for the song below so you can look at them and compare them. The produced track has the various elements of an actual band playing on it. You know, it's got drums on it, it's got all the percussion parts on it, it's got some backing vocals. I don't know if she did them all or if there are other backing vocalists on them, but when she did this live performance, she does it with a loop pedal. Loop pedals! And she builds up the percussive elements on her guitar, and she's got a tambourine, I think, at one point, and she adds that into, and she builds up the woo-woo, woo-woo, and then she adds the harmony over the top. all of these little elements get built up in a loop, and because the production on the song itself, I don't know which came first. I'd be interested to find, I need to actually, it'll take me too long to find out that now. I should have had a look at that. I didn't think to have a look at which actually came first in terms of this. I just remembered this performance, and so I just looked up the videos to go and remind myself of them to talk about in this video. If she produced the track first and put all the different elements on it, and then worked out how she would play it live with a loop pedal, or if she wrote this song using a loop pedal and maybe was gigging it live already, I don't know if that will have influenced the production. I think that's the beauty of this song, is I can't tell which came first. I can't tell which was influenced by which. I just know that they fit perfectly together because the looped way of playing it is the perfect way for her to perform it live, solo like that, other than, you know, she could just bring out a band. But there's something great about just watching her build up all the parts herself like that, especially because the track does somewhat build up the parts slowly as well. Anyway, point being, it works really well, and it's just as lively and engaging as the produced track, despite the fact that they sound different. But the overall feel of the track remains the same. And it's not because they haven't polished up the produced version and just gone with like a really laid back live version. It is a bit more laid back. It's not perfectly lined up and smoothed out, but it is pretty lined up and smoothed out. It doesn't sound as rough around the edges as the live version do, and yet they have the same feel when I listen to them. I think it's a great example of when a musician has managed to master the way they performed a song live, as well as the way that they've actually recorded it, and where both marry up nicely, but are different. But yeah, I'd love to hear other people's thoughts if you go and listen to both the live performance versions I've linked in the description below and the actual produced, mastered songs of each of them, and tell me what you think in terms of the differences between the two. Okay, and so now that I've brought it up, let's talk about loop pedals. God, I could probably do an entire video just on loop pedals and their influence on live music and white guys with guitars. Loop pedals and these samplers, these MIDI sample controller things that you can use in various different forms that they take, that people use on stage, have really brought the production of the studio onto the stage big time. Like, I briefly mentioned backing tracks and how but that literally is just taking something you produced in the studio and then using it live in some way. I love watching people who perform with samplers, and I'm very jealous of their confidence to be able to do all that stuff live, because I know that I would get muddled and mess stuff up if I tried to do that. But you can create some really amazing performances that are done by using production to do them, by using studio-based production and recording to do them. You know, watch them take they speak something into a microphone, or they take something out of the crowd that they have the crowd sing a note for them or something, and they throw it in and they start messing with the effects they've got, and then they loop that, and then they add some basic drums, and the next thing you know, there's an entire like song being produced on the stage in front of you, and suddenly production has become the live performance itself. But it allows you to basically build up a full produced song on stage. That's cool as a solo artist, because obviously you could just have a band playing all sorts of different parts, but bands are expensive. Loop pedals are also expensive, but bands are more expensive. Bands are also difficult to get together, and also then you're into certain genres of music, you know? There's a difference between using a sampler with sample drums to using an actual drummer. They sound different, and it has somewhat influenced how people produce music as well. Obviously, pop music has always relied heavily on repetition, which is why loop pedals work so well for a certain type of pop guitarist act, because they could loop patterns of percussion and a chord progression, you know, basic 4-chord progression, and you drop them in and out as you like. And that's basically what the track actually sounded like in the first place anyway. But I think even more now, repetition has become like the god of pop music. And it's very heavily based on a beat that is pretty much the same thing the whole way through, just different parts drop in and out. Easy harmonies that just get thrown on, some oohs and some whoops, something like that, you know, easy vocal parts that will fit nicely no matter what you're singing over the top of them. And let's be honest, that is the kind of thing that Ed Sheeran does. And I've actually linked a really interesting article below as well. This article will be linked in the description for you guys to go and read, of an interview with a producer who was working with Ed Sheeran in the studio and talking about the process. And in this article, it demonstrates perfectly how Ed Sheeran's sound, in terms of how he produces tracks, how he works with other producers and musicians to make his tracks, is so heavily based on the way that he gigged live, because he basically got his start by just doing loads of gigs as a solo artist, traveling around to do these gigs as well. And so his setup was very basic. It needed to be light, a light, small, portable guitar, and then a loop pedal. A really easy to transport way to get a more interesting produced sound. That influence of looping from his live performances is so clear in the way that he produces songs and the way that he has gone on to produce songs more and more. And this isn't just me saying this is this producer saying this in this article, talking about how basically it's all loop this and copy and paste that. And I'm sure there are a lot, again, of those purists of you in the comments who are going to be just head in your hands like, no, loop this and copy and paste that. What is the point in even doing music if you aren't going to play it anymore? And that has obviously heavily influenced his style, and he's not the only one doing it, right? And because of that, his songs have pretty similar feel when he plays them live. And my favourite part, actually, of this article is a section where the producer is talking. I've forgotten what the name of the producer is, but the article's linked below, so you're going to go and read it. He's talking about a collaboration they were doing, and in this collaboration, they were working with an actual drummer instead of just drum samples, which is how Ed usually works. And initially, Ed being kind of against this and not like against it, but like he's a bit reluctant about it. It's not how he usually works. He's not entirely comfortable with it. But in the process of working in that way in the studio, and this producer taking this live session drummer and then treating his parts in similar ways to how they did with these drum samples, with the copying and pasting and the looping and just taking sections of the song and working on it like that. He then goes on to talk about how Ed has since worked with that session drummer on things. And I found that quite an interesting part of the article, because that's like an example of a moment where actually being in the recording studio and the recording process itself and shifting and changing things about that more traditional live feel of a drum kit and the much more heavily produced feel of sampled drums, and sort of combining the techniques of the two has introduced something new to an artist in the studio that now he is using in his work. That was my big takeaway from that article, was that moment, because I think that is actually the beauty of all forms of music, is that all of them offer that opportunity for experimentation. When you shut yourself off to one, you don't actually allow for that opportunity to see where a song could go. So I guess the point I'm trying to make in this video, are you proud of me? We've had like a beginning, a middle, and now we're going to have a conclusion, guys. I haven't just rambled, because I have a conclusion here. Because the point I'm really trying to make in this video is that live music and recorded music are very different beasts. It's all music. You can just record a live performance if you want, but there is something different to what people are going to want and expect from recorded music and what we're able to do with it versus what you want and expect from live performances. But I don't think one is better than the other. I don't necessarily prefer one or the other. I feel more comfortable personally in a studio working on stuff like that than I do live. I love live performance. My calling is more this way. For other people, their calling is more to the stage. Some of them really hate being in the studio, and I can't relate to that. Maybe you have been in a situation where someone was just rigidly having you do take after take and then making you sit and watch them comp and tune things, and it just took all the life out of it for you. But that's not what a studio session actually has to be like. Because the point I think I'm really trying to make in this video is that you can't have one without the other. And you really shouldn't finish working on a song until you've looked at how it's going to interact in both environments. And more often actually ends up letting down one version of a song, whether it's a live performance that just really doesn't replicate the produced version. On the other side, a recorded version that does not do the live version justice and that strips all of the energy out of it and perfects it too much to the point that it doesn't feel like that song anymore. What lets them down is that they haven't factored in those two versions together and come up with something that actually fits for both of them. Because sometimes that looks like literally just your recorded version is you recording a live performance of the song, and that's what you should release. Or at the very least, you should try and replicate aspects of a live performance in the recording process. So, maybe have your two vocalists in the booth recording together at the same time. Maybe have them do through takes, not tuning everything perfectly. not editing everything to be perfectly in time. You have to allow the influence of live music into recorded music, and you have to allow the influence of recorded music into live music, because it has made for better live performances. And now if you could all jump to the comments to reassure me that I made the right choice with my song, and that you like that the live version is just a little bit different, but the recorded version works well. Tell me it's good. Tell me I did a good job, please. Tell me I didn't get all pretentious in the video just now and actually my song sounds like crap and I should have done something more like the feel of the live song and I've just ruined it. Anywho, that was my point. That's where my rambling led today. Please feel free to discuss openly in the comments. Just, you know, be nice and respectful, guys. I promise I'm going to do something much less pretentious in my next video, because I'm just going to be screwing about with an acoustic guitar amp. Here's the next video I have planned, so that's going to be much less pretentious than this. If you enjoyed this video, then you might enjoy my content in general, in which case you might want to hit that subscribe button, but I know that that's a big decision to make, so do feel free to check out some other videos before you do so. There will be something recommended on the end screen. You can also follow me on all of my general musician socials or on my artist socials if you want more pretentious stuff. There's also a link down there to my Buy Me a Coffee, where I have a few different membership options if you want to support me on a monthly basis and also get access to exclusive extra content. But you can also just drop me a quick tip if you just wanted to say that you enjoyed the video. I believe that that is everything. I shall leave you guys with your deep existential thoughts. Until next time. Bye! Something that we thought was